Council Fiscal, would you please call a roll?
Roll call. Councilmember Brissette, Chair. Present. Councilmember Moreno. Councilmember Jeruso.
Here.
Present. Councilmember Gillison Palmer. Councilmember Nguyen.
Here.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. McKnight. Before we consider any items, Council Fiscal will read the entire agenda in its entirety. Then we will take a 20-minute recess to receive public comments on any matters being considered for a vote. Council Fiscal, please read the agenda. Let the record show that Councilmember Kristen Palmer just joined us.
4 members in a quorum. All right. The agenda is as follows. 1, roll call. Number 2, approve the minutes from September 1st, 2020 meeting. Number 3, motion number M2342, amendments to the classified pay plan, Sewage and Water Board. A, pilot special rate of pay, meter reading incentive pay program. B, classification, water meter reading field services supervisor, non-exempt, per September 25th, 2020 letter from Lisa M. Hudson, Personnel Director. Number 4, resolution was introduced on 10/6/20 by Councilmember Jeruso by request. This resolution approves the 5th supplemental sewage service revenue bond resolution in connection with the issuance of not exceeding $64,750,000 of sewage and water board revenue bonds of the City of New Orleans, Louisiana, approving the form, terms, security, and manner of execution. Number 5, ordinance calendar numbers 33119, 33120, introduced 9/17/20, Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend 2020 operating budget revenues and expenditures appropriating $3,750,000 of Federal Department of Justice grants funds from intergovernmental transfers to Department of Police Personnel Services to provide funding to hire and or rehire career law enforcement officers in an effort to increase their community policing capacity and crime prevention efforts. The grant award is an increasing match with a 25% match in year 1, 50% match in year 2, 2.5% match in year 3, and then the city is required to fund them fully for a 12-month period after the grant ends. Number 6, ordinance calendar numbers 33132, introduced 10/1/20, by Councilmember Brissette by request. This ordinance amends 2020 operating budget expenditures, transferring $700,000 of general funds from the Office of Community Development, Personnel Services Code 100, to the Office of Information Technology and Innovation, ITI, as operating 200, supplement IT as budget to account for unplanned expenses incurred in response to a cyber attack. This additional funding will be used to pay for planned budgeted expenses related to software licensing and telecommunications products and services as originally intended. Number 7, ordinance calendar numbers 33133, 33134, introduced 10/1/20 by Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend 2020 operating budget revenues and expenditures appropriating $20,000 of Cities of Financial Empowerment Foundation grant funds from intergovernmental transfers to the Office of Performance and Accountability Personnel Services to provide funding for the City of New Orleans to participate in their City Start initiative and receive a $20,000 grant and technical assistance to convene stakeholders to develop a financial empowerment blueprint. Funds will also be used to cover the cost of city personnel time spent developing the blueprint. Number 8, ordinance calendar numbers 33135, 33136, introduced 10/1/20 by Councilmember Brissette by request. The ordinance amend 2020 operating budget revenues and expenditures appropriating $5,302,696 in FEMA grant funds from intergovernmental transfers to the Fire Department Personnel Services for the staffing for adequate fire and emergency responses safer grant program. This $5.3 million provides funding for the first year of a 3-year grant totaling $15.9 million. Funds will be used to assist in increasing the number of firefighters who help communities meet industry standards and to attain 24-hour staffing to provide adequate protection from fire and fire-related hazards. These funds will also be used to hire at least 25 additional firefighters during 2020. Ordinance calendar numbers 33137, 33138, introduced 10/1/20, Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend 2020 operating budget of revenues expenditures appropriating $356,051 in FEMA grant funds from intergovernmental transfers to the Fire Department as operating with assistance to Firefighters Grant, AFG, to protect the health and safety of the public and firefighting personnel against fire and fire-related hazards. The funds will be used to purchase 582 personal rescue bailout kits. As a condition of the grant, the city is required to contribute non-federal funds equal to or greater than 10% of the award, $35,605. Number 10, Ordinance Council numbers 33139, 33140, introduced 10120, by Councilmember Brissette by request. These ordinances amend 2020 operating budget revenues and expenditures appropriating $73,818 in FEMA grant funds and government transfers to the fire department as operating the Assistance Firefighters Grant AFG for the purpose of PPE and related supplies, including reimbursements to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. These funds will be used to purchase 1,700 cartridge filters and 580 full-face respirator twin port adapters. As a condition of this grant, the city is required to contribute non-federal funds equal to rate of 10% of the award, $7,381. Number 11, budget reports, CAO, finance. A, personnel spending forecast. B, revenue collections report. C, operating expenses, available balances by department. And 12, adjournment.
Thank you, and we will now take a 20-minute recess to allow for public comment. Thank you, and see you back in 20 minutes. All right, that ends our 20-minute recess. We will head to the next agenda item, and that is the approval of the September 1st Budget Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilmember Jeruso, second by the chair. All in favor?
Aye.
3 yeas, no nays, and the minutes are approved. Council Fiscal, next agenda item.
Item 3, motion number M-20-342.
Mr. McKnight, were there any public comment on the minutes?
No comments on the minutes.
Okay, agenda item motions 23-342. Mr. McKnight, the Sewage and Water Board motions.
No comments.
We have the pilot special rate of pay meter reading incentive pay program, as well as the new classification of the water meeting reading field services supervisor, non-exempt. Do we have anybody on the call from Civil Service Commission? Councilmember Jeruso, you have any comment on this?
I mean, the only thing I would say is I've read the letter. I know the CAO's office is on here. The effort here, I think, is pretty clear. It's number one, to make sure that we are keeping meter readers who went down to dire numbers during COVID, to provide an incentive pay program for people who are reading meters because we're critically low. I see all the district council members shaking their heads because it's affecting all of us, whether you live in Gentilly, New Orleans East, Algiers, Mid-City. It's been something that's happened across. And so how do you retain more people? How do you pay them properly for doing the work? And how do you ensure that you have the good supervision that you need as well? So that's the purpose of all of this. And I think given sort of the situation that we're in, the fact that we're trying to increase from estimates to actual reads, a position that we want to encourage.
Yeah, I know they supplemented outside sourcing for a contractor to supplement help throughout the city to assist with the so-called averaging of the billing, estimating with the meter reading. So with that, if there are no other questions, Councilmember Palmer.
Yeah, I just want to know, Councilmember Jeruso, where are we with like the smart meter as well? Like, are they trying to expand that? And have they done like a cost breakdown on if we went to that and if that would save us money over time?
Yeah, Sewage and Water Board desperately wants to do that. The issue has been the initial RFP that was put out for a project manager was rejected because of the technical conflicts. They had to start all over again with that. That's being put out. And then the meters themselves are citywide for 136,000 accounts. It's going to be millions and millions of dollars. And so you're looking at probably a 2 to 4 year integration period from the point at which you're ready to move forward. So I think we're all circling around the same thing, which is we know we need it sooner rather than later. But with that said, we got to get the actual reads up first and then integrate this system that's been part of a pilot program in Algiers for 12 years now.
Right. No, I totally agree with you. I think this is a smart move. I was just wondering where we were on an update on that. And that also, I brought this up last time, the Sewage and Water Board. I don't know where it went and if they can even do it, but couldn't they even offer customers to buy their own meter and to opt in that way? I would think a lot of folks would want to just go ahead and buy it because they're sick of not having real information?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I see Christie's on the call right now, and I know we are and other offices are having ongoing dialogue on billing with Sewage and Water Board. And Councilmember Palmer, sort of to your point too, I think one of the questions we should be looking at is if you are upgrading things with your house, whether it's a meter or permeable concrete, are there ways that we can get tax deductions or credits, right, from the state level as a result? So I think that's something we all should be looking at to try and encourage and incentivize this to happening. As we know, government doesn't have the funds right now to catch up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. We have a motion. Councilmember Jeruso.
So moved. Yeah, I move.
It's been moved by Councilmember Jeruso.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilmember Nguyen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. 4 yeas, no nays, and the motion's approved and moved to full council. Next agenda item number 4, Mr. McKnight.
Resolution number R2343.
This is a resolution for Sewage and Water Board sewer revenue bonds, resolution by Councilmember Jeruso.
Thank you,
Turn it
Mr.
over to
Chair.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as the chair just said, this is a resolution for $64.75 million in additional sewer bonds. Council may remember, this is now in the second tranche of those bonds and subject to being corrected by either Christie or Jason, who are on the call. This is for ongoing treatment for the consent decree and really going to improve sort of the sewer quality around the city. We've already voted for and approved the first round of bonding, and this would now be the second round. So with that, Jason or Christie, is there anything I missed with regards to that?
I'll jump in very quickly. I think it was a great explanation. Procedurally, you're spot on. This was a process that began late in 2019. The first tranche of just over $10 million was delivered in June. This is the second tranche. It's going to fund consent decree projects, JIRR projects, and also other projects that are part of the Sewage and Water Board's $200+ million capital improvement plan for the sewer system alone. Paid only out of sewer revenues, and with your approval, this will then advance to the Board of Liquidation for the sale process. We're hoping to have funds in hand in early December and the projects to continue moving at that time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Jason. And sort of Councilmember Palmer, to your point about the AMI, right? You need the money to get the work done. And so here we are with Jason, and thank you for gently correcting me. That includes more than just the consent decree. This is an opportunity at extraordinary ability to leverage resources to start getting work above and beyond consent decree, JIRR, and otherwise to do this. So subject to any public comment or questions, I would move to go through the resolution. Mr. Chair.
A second.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso. Just quickly, I know, Jason, you're more on the bonding and securitization side, financing, but I think Councilmember Jeruso said that Christie was on a call. Can you give us an insight as to infrastructure-wise, where are these projects for the sewer repair and consent decree improvements are going to be improved?
I believe Christie's on. Is it a question geographically or just from a process standpoint where they
From
are?
a geographical standpoint.
Yeah, I believe they're throughout the city, but I'll let Christie address that.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Councilmember, and thanks, Jason. Yes, the remaining, our sewer infrastructure is divided into 5 basins that cover the entire city. To date, we have completed work in 2 of those basins, but the additional funding will help us complete work in the remaining 3 basins. It obviously won't cover all of that work, but the next projects are in those 3 basins, which cover a large swath of the city at this point. I'm happy to share a specific map with you offline as well.
That would be great if you could send us that information so we could share it with the public. Thank you. I believe Councilmember Jeruso, you moved in favor.
I moved in favor. I think Councilmember Palmer
Councilmember
seconded.
Palmer seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 4 yeas, no nays. The resolution is approved and moved to the full council. Thank you all.
Mr. Chair.
Next item.
Ordinance calendar numbers 33119, 33120.
This is an ordinance of $3.75 million from the Federal Department of Justice grant for the Department of Police and Law Enforcement for Community Policing. Mr. Lyman, are you on the call?
I am. These ordinances appropriate $3.75 million in federal Department of Justice grant funds to NOPD via intergovernmental transfers. The funds will be used to hire and or rehire career law enforcement officers in an effort to increase community policing capacity and crime prevention efforts. I do have Ms. Marjorie Patterson Abbott. Should you have any specific questions about that program, to answer those for you.
I do have one particular question. In light of, can you enlighten us in light of the budget constraints that we are facing as a city with this grant award and the rules related to the matches in year 1, year 2, and year 3? One question is where do you hope to find the grant funds to match the award as it relates to the general fund and where we sit as a city economically?
Good afternoon. We requested the matching funds through the budget process. One of the stipulations of this grant is that match be new non-law enforcement dedicated funds. What this means, though, is that for every one general fund officer in year 1, we'll get 1.75 officers approximately. So it's allowing us to get more bang for the buck. We have a small contribution the first year. We'll have a larger one throughout the life of the grant. It will increase, but it also can, we also can adjust our general fund requests that going forward. We were able to kind of, we knew we had to reduce our general fund recruit request. And so this allowed us to not drop so far below in maintaining our level of force.
I understand. So your general fund request going into 2020 for recruitment will be reduced, but you're requesting non-NOPD match money for the grant. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes, that sums it up.
Thank you. Council members, any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember
So, thank you. So are they going to be placed throughout every district?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so do
they're
we have to,
general.
so is there a number assigned to each NOPD district or?
Not at this point. We were funded 30 officers and those will be spread out throughout the city.
Okay. And has the program started? So I'm assuming that it's going to start next year or?
Yes.
Okay,
We
so
plan on
2021.
do-
Okay.
Yes, we plan on the next recruit class, starting to hire in that next recruit class.
Okay. And what are we doing in reference to recruiting class to make them more of a community officers? Are we adding something into the training to identify that they are blended into the community?
Well, as far, I'm not an operations person, so I don't have that deployment information. However, all of our officers are trained in community policing. So we do identify when we have had COPS grants in the past, we've identified those and we make sure that that is what they're doing.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Nguyen. Councilman Palmer.
Thank you. Along those same lines, when you read the description for the ordinance, it talks about either funding to hire and or rehire career in an effort to increase their community policing capacity. Is there also, like Councilmember Nguyen was saying, money to be used for training of existing officers in community policing?
No, these funds are purely for hiring, enhancing your current level of force. So however many for example, we have, I believe it's 60 new recruits in the 2021 budget. So we can hire up to 90 new recruits.
Okay, but then that goes along the same veins that Councilman Brissette was saying, that is this going to put us in a bad posture with a 20% reduction across the board, potentially?
I'm not sure I have the answer for that. I'm
That's fine.
hoping
You know
maybe
what?
you'll be able to jump in here in a second and help me out with this one.
And I'm sorry that I should have probably asked these questions. Perhaps maybe Chair, can we maybe at the full council meeting get a little bit more explanation on this when we bring it to the council?
Yeah, Councilmember Palmer, I think, Mr. Lyman, can we get that answer from Gilbert, the CAO?
Absolutely.
And,
What I am familiar with respect to this is the CAO and the mayor are committed to fully leveraging the resources that are available under this particular grant. So what's been shared with me is whatever it takes to take full advantage of it and utilize the funds in this grant and also provide services to our community. The administration is committed to doing so.
Yeah, no, and this administration has been very good with leveraging and finding outside money, especially in terms of public safety. And I think we're going to see that later on in the budget with what the fire department has done. And I'm 100% in favor of it. And I've been really impressed that the administration has found so many outside funds for this. I just want to make sure if we are now going down the pathway where we're going to be furloughing existing officers and people within this, within this framework, how can we justify new hires? And how will that fit within, you see what I'm saying? How will that fit within the existing to have parity? Because if we're going to ask our existing officers, right now we know that the furloughs are going to the end of the year, but I think we're all well aware that we don't know where this budget is going to go for 2021 and how will that fit in. I just want to make sure that we have parity for our existing officers going in and that this does not hamstring the administration in terms of funding. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. Yeah, we're definitely on the same page with that. Seeing no other questions, would Move adoption of ordinance calendar 33, 119 and 120.
So
Second.
moved.
Or seconded. Councilmember Jeruso seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
4 yeas, no nays, and the ordinances are approved and moved to full council. Next item, Mr. McKnight.
Councilman, I apologize. I think we were on mute. There are public comments on this item. Is that right, Mike?
I have 30 comments.
30? Oh, all right, sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Erin Sinclair, not a paid rep. I believe that the city of New Orleans can be a leader in the movement to defund the police. We have a chance to show the country what it looks like when a community has compassion and cares for those of us who are the most at risk, those of us who need help, safety, and security. We have seen over and over again that police, prisons, and jails are not the solution. I believe we can find better solutions to problems in our community. I believe that in the middle of the pandemic, we can put millions of dollars meant for policing towards people in our communities who actually need it. We need to find ways to lift our people up, not lock them up. The people of New Orleans are powerful. We're not giving up. We will be heard. Defund the police. Rebecca McLaughlin, not a paid rep. Do not give the police any more money. They do not keep our community safe. I watch every night as thousands of dollars are wasted as dozens of police surround and intimidate peaceful protesters. With drunken crowds congregate on Bourbon Street in the middle of a pandemic. They do not serve public safety in a way and need to more money to fail with. Invest in our communities, children and families, jobs and education. We do not want more police terror. Defund the police. We have Charlotte Dillon, not a paid rep. Dear City Council, I am deeply disappointed to see this item on your agenda as you prepare to enter the process of thinking about next year's budget. As you know, last year NOPD received $200 million of the city's $700 million budget. I understand that another $3.75 million is not just a drop in the bucket. However, I've learned that the city, only 2% of the $5.6 million in federal rental assistance meant for people in New Orleans has been distributed. And as eviction courts open back up this week, as so many of the city's residents continue to be unemployed, it is truly upsetting to see money for NOPD being prioritized once again. As the country cries for defunding police departments and funding systems of care, I hope you will consider making affordable housing, access to healthcare, and community care a priority next year instead of prioritizing profits in policing. We have Allie Doherty, not a paid rep. I'm a resident of District D, a food service worker, a tenant, and a graduate student at the Flint University of Social Work. I would like to speak to ordinance calendar number 33-119-33120. It is extremely disappointing to learn that the city has applied for a massive federal grant to help grow the New Orleans Police Department. There are innumerable places that the energy funneled into this grant can have been directed. On top of that, it's outrageous in the current state of the world to invest more in policing. The NOPD harasses the people of New Orleans and contributes to our state's chronic, globally unprecedented rate of incarceration. NOPD does not improve the quality of life of New Orleans, not to mention the NOPD allows city officials to get behind the wheel of a city-owned vehicle, drunk, harm an innocent person, and then proceed to propose a budget element that gives the police millions of dollars. It is absurd. I implore you, the city councilors of New Orleans, to invest your time, energy, and money into fair, safe, adequate housing for the people you represent. I recommend you turn to the police in order to understand what that housing should look like. Instead of stealing our possessions of the homeless people under the Claiborne underpass, learn what they need, help them build homes they need. Shutting people off to the east does not count as aid. There are numerous mutual aid and community organizations, Southern Solidarity in particular, that have done more for the homeless and vulnerable housed people in New Orleans in 8 months than you all have done in years. It is not that complicated. Every constituent is of equal importance and value. If you do not believe this, you should not be a public representative. Council people, you seek out the voices and concerns of all people you represent. The answer is no, you do not. If you did, there is absolutely no way that providing the NOPD $3.5 million would seem appropriate. Stop going to NOPD money when they have for years harmed and undermined the people that they are supposed to be at a service of. We do not need more police officers. We need safe housing. We don't need to jails. We need safe housing. Councilmember Brissett and fellow city council members, you must understand that taking federal aid for NOPD is spitting in the face of your constituency. Honestly, ask yourselves, who are you serving and who does the NOPD serve? Look to those in need. Jails are not homes. Policing is not care. The budget must reflect the needs and wants of all people who live in New Orleans. Refuse the DOG grant and do not provide the NOPD with federal funding. The people of New Orleans need to prioritize the fund and police and fund community informed affordable housing. We have Lily Moore, not a paid rep. We are giving the police $3.5 million when I don't see many going to schools or community-based operations assisting in mutual aid necessary due to coronavirus. This comes at a time when people throughout New Orleans are facing evictions and experiencing homelessness at alarming rates. Where the money allocated towards keeping people housed and fed, why is the priority on policing and incarcerating those most vulnerable? This funding should be used for mental health care, affordable housing, rental assistance, and health care. Fund the people, not the police. Shana Weinrip, not a paid rep. We cannot give NOPD any more money. We need to be allocating that money into the community, into more affordable housing, into better health care. Most likely, if people had adequate resources, less crime would be committed and there would be less need for the police. As someone who works in social services, I see the intense need for more funds for the community. Please do the right thing and fund the community and not give more money to the police. We have Maggie Zambola, not a paid representative. The city council and mayor should be looking into federal and state aid funds to house people in homes, not more funds to police people that will inevitably land them in jail via racial profiling and criminalizing poor and working class neighborhoods. Community policing does not prevent crime. It inflicts violence by a police state. We are in the middle of an exciting crisis. It is unconscionable that the city government is wasting time figuring out how to get more money into the police and prisons at a time when the entire country is rejecting the prison and industry and the violence that it inflicts on Black and Indigenous communities and other people of color, as well as working class whites. You know what prevents crime? Addressing poverty. Keeping people in their homes keeps everyone safe. You all need to do better because we can barely see how you have lifted a finger to help New Orleans stay in their homes. The people most at risk of facing eviction in New Orleans are Black women. Do better. Vote no on this amendment. Charles Shuley, not a paid rep. Do not allocate additional funding for police. Non-residents need housing, infrastructure, and functioning libraries and services. We are screaming for this and we need you to listen. We are watching and will vote accordingly to how you provide for not police, us. If you can house or feed the population, that's a sign you need to look at your priorities. Do it. Emily Schumer, not a paid rep. Flip the police budget and invest in communities instead of policing communities. Further police funding will not provide housing, jobs, or meet basic needs of New Orleans. Camille Harden, not a paid rep. This agenda item is deeply disappointing. I understand that $3.75 million is not much for NOPD's large budget, but as there is so much national pressure to defund police budgets in order to fund care and support for our cities in the midst of a pandemic, it is a shame that money is being reallocated to the police department. I hope that you consider the needs of the people who live in your city as you move to think about next year's budget. Pasha Jovanovic, no, not a paid rep. I do not support any increase in the budget for the police. We need to allocate more resources towards housing, justice, and healthcare. We don't need any more useless police. Jay Clayton, not a paid rep. The position of the City Council, as shown through agenda item number 5, the 2020 budget proposal introduced by Councilmember Brissett, shows that the explicit disregard for the care and needs of our community. Instead of focusing on survival and basic human rights of all people living in the city, you are looking to fund more money into hiring and rehiring the police. Incarceration and criminalization of our community is not a need. Providing housing and prioritizing the need for us to stay in our homes and be given homes when we do not have them is the only way to protect us. The police department actively inflicts violence on Black, Indigenous, POC, and impoverished people in the community. This ordinance takes resources and directs them into community harm. Cancel rent and mortgages, provide permanent affordable housing on community-controlled land. Push the conversation from criminalizing our community to sustain community support and care. It disgusts me that you're wasting your time and resources on what puts us especially in danger. Justin Schmidt, not a paid rep. I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to speak out to the administration and the council that while restricted in some ways, the 1914 Atwood Wisner donation, which expired as of August 4, 2014, could provide a meaningful source of much needed funds. The official records of the Atwood Wisner Donation Advisory Committee for the 5 calendar years, 2015 to 2019, reflect that approximately $20,594,000 $65.11 should have been received by the city, but instead we are distributed to the income beneficiaries of the 1914 Edward Wisner donation, 56 of which include individuals, heirs of Edward Wisner or Edward Wisner's wife attorney, most of whom do not even live in New Orleans or the state. This is a significant amount of income due to the city that could be used for a number of needs consistent with the wishes of Mr. Wisner. Under the circumstances, I am at a loss to why Mayor Cantrell appropriately intended this trust in perpetuity on March 3rd, 2020. Thank you. Daiquiri Jones, not a paid rep. First, let me say I'm disappointed in the restricted time to leave a comment and the seemingly deceptive layout of the agenda items for comment. This is a time of great stress and potential harm for many. Many people in this city, and our voices mean more now. Instead of accessibility, we have annoyances. And now the city continues to seek out funding for law enforcement while neglecting the incredible housing crisis we face. Why are we still investing in jailing our community over providing them access to safe housing? We all know that those crimes stem from needs not being met. We already are part of a state that has the highest incarceration rate in the world, and still we aren't pushing diligently. It means to provide a safety for our community that's falling into pieces. Are you too sheltered from what is happening? I'm tired of hearing people claim that they don't have the power. That's evading accountability. Demand more power, defund the drain, and that is militarized force that keep community broken and actually invest in communities. Actually access how we want your time and resources spent. It's our community after all. We are the experts on our own lives and we are the best asset of the city. Renee Leach, not a paid rep. Hello, I am deeply bothered by the proposed new jail. It is a staggering upfront cost and will be expensive to maintain. Further, it is not serving the community. Some people have said that it is for moving sick inmates into, but that is a costly and effective solution to the problem. Many inmates are not getting adequate access to medical care. Why not finance that instead? Not to mention that there are so many underfunded priorities working in the French Quarter. I met so many people who were denied proper mental health resources that found themselves living on the streets and facing daily instability. People in jail are also not receiving adequate mental health resources, which would cause lifelong trauma and further impediments. Money for a new jail could instead be used to help improve communities and combat recidivism. Kamala Sobrio, not a paid rep. It is important that the city is proposing further funding to an already loaded police department budget. In a time of mass housing insecurity, financial insecurity, and a public health crisis, it is shocking that funding affordable and safe housing for the residents of this city is not a #1 priority. We need this money to be allocated towards creating equitable housing options. We want homes, not jails. We want safer communities for all, and not that can only be done with everyone as a roof over their heads, not more police. Wyatt Rosser, not a paid rep. Allocating more money to police does not make communities safer. They do not protect or serve anyone. We need money for healthcare, housing, education, etc. We need to defund the police and divest from policing and put that money to work in ways that actually lowers crime by eliminating poverty and homelessness. Goji Bordello, not a paid rep. This is my First Amendment right that this comment be read in entirety. I'm strongly against the reallocation of $3.5 million federal Department of Justice funds to Orleans Police for the purpose of hiring and rehiring more police officers. Care for communities, not cops. More funding for police does not equal community safety. The sheriff wants more funding for beds in jail so he can have more power to exploit Black and brown New Orleans, and we are saying we don't want or need that. We need safe and affordable housing, not more funding for the police. More funding for police and jails does not give us safe and affordable housing. More funding for police does not equate to safe and affordable health care and mental health services. Building a mental health unit at OPP would not solve this issue either. Care for communities, not cops. No more racist pigs in the streets. System racism has to end, and that means immediately halting the expense of the prison industrial complex and the extension of cultural geographies. Also, where this comment's limited to a 30 minutes window, why did you switch the agenda item at the very last minute? This all reads as incredibly suspicious to the citizens of New Orleans. Hear our voices, know our stories, defund the police, no to eradication of federal funds to hire more cops. Mariah Angela, not a paid rep. The eradication of public funds into the police department does not constitute proper community resourcing. The people of New Orleans do not need more police during a time when we need more resources for community housing, food, and mental health resources. This council must act on the interests of the community it serves and is paid by. The government for the people, by the people, which does not listen and enact in the community's interest is a useless endeavor. To support the community, defund the police. Sarah Ritz, not a pay rep. No more police. Distribute the funds to housing, food, drinking water, human rights. Dylan Hersey, not a pay rep. Only 2% of the $500 million in federal rental assistance for New Orleans has been distributed since July. It is clear that elected officials are prioritizing policing and profit over community well-being. Joshua Granada, not a pay rep. Please do not invest $4 million into police hiring. This is not for the majority of the community you claim to serve, except give more money to their oppression. Do the right thing. Francis Wells, not a pay rep. My name is Francis Wells, and I'm also representing my husband, Theo Lord Hughes, with my comment today. I want to express deep grief and disappointment that the city continues to prioritize safe and affordable housing for New Orleans residents. While there are community members being evicted from their homes during the pandemic, the city continues to shift funds towards hiring new police officers and increasing police capacity. Why are the city officials spending time, resources, and money to secure federal grant funding for new police officers right now? This is like a direct message to New Orleans that the city would rather see poor people in jail than in safe homes. White Rosser, not a paid rep. Defund the police. Why are you furloughing workers yet allocating more money for more cops? This is not what the people want or need. Allocating more money to the police does not make communities safer. They do not protect or serve anyone. We need more money for healthcare, housing, education, etc. We need to defund and divest from policing and put that money to work in ways that actually lowers crime by eliminating poverty and homelessness. Catherine Tinsley, not a paid rep. I will be brief and concise. The people of New Orleans will not stand for an increase in the police budget. This fact has been made extremely clear. To know the will of the people is injustice, and without justice, there will be no peace. Maisie Stell, not a paid rep. Under my First Amendment right, I demand my comment be read in its entirety. As a concerned citizen of New Orleans, I am here to speak against the eradication of $3.5 million from the Department of Justice to the Department of Police. Currently, thousands of New Orleans are facing evictions during the pandemic with no safe places to go. The mayor's already ordered officers to kick out homeless folks who have nowhere to go from under the Claiborne Bridge, which was their only option for shelter. She was insulted the people by creating a GoFundMe to house the most vulnerable, but sending officers to strip those she refuses to support of everything they have left. How is this justice? Where will we go? How can we work with no safe jobs or homes? Please defund the police and send the money we desperately need to keep folks safe and off the streets. Nora Marlin, not a paid rep. Those residents do not want millions from Trump's Justice Department for even more money for police. Flip the budget and invest in people and families rather than militarized police. Chanel Baptiste, not a paid rep. The money being directed towards policing needs to be redirected towards developing community. Over-policing does not solve our problems. Right, it continues to exacerbate the issues we have been dealing with for years. Jay Callison, not a paid rep. How can you guys justify giving additional money to the police who already receive 63% of the budget while our country experiences a nationwide budget deficit and when the local police have been proven to overstep and abuse their authority? Naomi Overman Cox, not a paid rep. Increasing the budget for the police department is the exact opposite of what that money should be used for. The fact is, NOPD already over-polices not low-income neighborhoods, which are predominantly, NOPD already gets 63% of the city's budget, while only 4% goes to children, families, and job development. The police don't actually help the people. They don't prevent crime. They don't even show up until after a crime has been committed. As a Black citizen, I have seen firsthand the blatant racism displayed by the officers of the city. And to the budget of the NOPD will only increase the already stressed relationship between the cops and the communities. We as the citizens are not blind to what the politicians are trying to do here. Removing the consent decree as well as increasing the police budget, NOPD is nothing more than giving permission to the cops to go back and doing illegal and reprehensible things to the police people. If you want to help the citizens of New Orleans, invest that money back into the low-income neighborhoods. Take that money and help people stay in their homes. Make sure that people are being fed. Make sure people are able to get health care. This is what a respectable, decent person would do. They would not all but threaten the community with more disregard, violence, and debt. That ends the comments.
Councilmember Brissette, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. We will go ahead and vote again on that item, and that was calendar number 33,119 and 120. All in favor?
Councilmember?
Councilmember, yes, Palmer.
I just would want to make a quick statement to some of the comments that we heard. I just would like to make a statement that on a lot of these federal grants that people go after, they are for very specific things. And I think that we should bring it up with the administration. Does this in fact lessen our responsibility from the general fund to go towards public safety? And would that allow us to redirect money from that particular pot to things like affordable housing? Because I do want to say that I 100% agree with a lot of the comments that we heard, that really now is the time to have a mass rebuilding effort on housing and ensuring that folks can stay in their houses. But I just also want a lot of people to know that a lot of these grants are very specific, and we don't write them, we don't write the terms of the agreements, right? So like if the federal government is releasing these federal funds, they are specifically for a certain purpose, and that does not mean that we can use them for something else. But it could mean that it could lessen our general fund responsibilities to that line. And I think that would be a really good question to ask when the administration comes, when we bring this up at full council.
Thank you, and that's a great point, Councilmember Palmer. This definitely allows us to reinvest those dollars, which otherwise would have been used to attempt to get police officers and recruit officers, otherwise to go towards affordable housing, into infrastructure, into social services that we would have not been able to use. So thank you very much. Councilmember Druso.
And might I just add to the point Councilmember Palmer made, which is if a grant is funding a significant portion of the cost and the city is then only supposed to pay a portion of it, then by definition, that should free up some general fund dollars. But I think to the points we've all made, it'd be good to hear that out loud. And so that may be able to be apportioned in other places or offset as appropriate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Lyman, I hope you can take that back and have that ready for us when we go to full council.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. That's 4 yeas. Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4 yeas, no nays, and the ordinance is adopted and moved to full council. Next item, Mr. McKnight.
Number 6, ordinance calendar number 33132.
Mr. Lyman.
Yes. This particular ordinance transfers $700,000 from the Office of Community Development's General Fund Personal Services budget to the Office of Information Technology and Innovations General Fund Other Operating Budget. In response to the cyber attack, ITI had to encumber a large portion of its 2020 budget allocation on unplanned expenses. We've reported to you all and others the impact of the cyber attack on current expenditures in 2020. So as a result, they need additional funds to pay for planned budgeted expenses pertaining to software licensing and telecommunication products and services that they no longer have funds for because the cyber funds are response to cyber attack supplanted funds that were originally destined for these particular expenses that have been identified now. I also have our CIO, Ms. Kim LeGroux, online to answer any specific questions you might have about cyber and how those funds were utilized.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman. Welcome, Director Chief LeGroux, to the Budget Committee. I just have a comment and a question. Comment, just want to thank you for you and your office's work with protecting our infrastructure. It's almost been a year and you've done a great job with making restoration efforts and doing due diligence in recovering and putting back the city's infrastructure, software infrastructure back on its feet. And it's, I know, an ongoing challenge with ongoing threats and day-to-day efforts to make sure that our firewalls are strong and that we are as best stable as we can be. So just want to say thank you. And two, it's not so much a question for you, but in reference, Mr. Lyman, maybe you could answer the question of the 700,000 transfer. Just trying to figure out how this impact operationally code enforcement's department, being that we are transitioning seasons from summer to fall, and in the fall and winter months, these vacant lots are less likely to get cut. In having lots, I know throughout the city, and district council members I know are familiar with this. Just wondering, how is code enforcement impacted, whether it be vacant lots, pool maintenance, and so forth, adjudication efforts? Just trying to figure out, is this in any way gonna impact their budget operationally? And of course, I am supportive of Ms. LeGroux and technology's efforts to make them strong as well.
Yeah. Based on our initial assessment, the movement.
If you could speak up, Mr. Lyman, we can't hear you.
Yes, based on our initial assessment, the movement of these particular funds from that area will not impact their operations at all. These funds were initially set aside to hire additional staff, but due to COVID, we were not, COVID lessened the need for the additional staff, and we are now reallocating these funds to Ms. LeGroux's area to take care of a more pressing matter. The expenditures that we've identified for ITI or current ongoing expenditures to maintain existing operations that are much needed for continuing her efforts to protect the city's IT resources.
All right, I just want to make sure that, you know, for the remainder of the year, code enforcement has what they need to do the job, you know, that they that our constituents call our officers for. You know, they've been Higgins Gate in District C, and Cindy's Place and in District E and so forth. And I know Councilmember Deruso and myself with other constituent issues. Councilmember Nguyen, you had a question? No, good. Ms. LeGroux.
Thank you, Council Member and committee for considering this request. This will, as Mr. Lyman said, allow us to maintain our telecommunications infrastructure and resume the monthly recurring charges that we have for either our telecommunications expenses or licenses and fees that were due later in the year. So we are planning through our end of the year spend, and this gets us through and allows us to make those procurements through the end of 2020.
Councilmember Palmer.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if, hi, Ms. LeGroux, thanks again for all your work on this. I don't think anybody really gets a break anymore around this building. So I'm sorry, I thought I heard that with the COVID, there's a freeze, a hiring freeze. So this money is to backfill expenditures that were created from the cyber attack, or I'm sorry.
For us, this is our ongoing expenditure. So telecommunications expenses, we used those funds early in the year for cyber related expenses, and this recoups and put money back into our budget to continue paying our monthly obligations. And licenses coming up through the end of the year.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure if that's what I heard. And so, but I guess my other question is, because we have had a hiring freeze, we have had less administrative money coming out because of COVID, people working from home. Does this mean that $700,000 was the delta of what's left, and we're not going to have any more debt left over from the cyber attack? Does this pay us up to what that meant to your department?
For us, pretty much, yes. So money coming out of the budgeted funds for IT for these expenses, we've calculated through the end of the year. We don't anticipate any more cyber-related costs and any unanticipated cyber-related costs. We are actually in the process of recouping funds now. Yes.
Okay. And so I just want the public to be aware as well. My follow-up question to that is, are we now properly positioned for any potential future cyber attacks? Are we, we have systems in place to ensure that won't happen again?
Yes, we are to some extent. There are other, we've acquired quite a bit of tools, and they require some in-place mechanics that we are still working through. The pandemic has delayed the implementation of some hardware in our cyber response. We are good for now. We're holding, and we've implemented quite a few new tools. For instance, we've delayed our security awareness training because we have a new insurance provider and a new tool that we're rolling out. So there are some things that are remaining to do. We don't feel that we are threatened in any way. We are just executing the new plan that we've put in place, and it's going very well.
Okay. And then also along those lines, I know, and I spoke with the CAO about this as well, is that we have to use technology to be, because of social distancing, because of limited city hall hours, that we had to beef up our IT departments across the board. Has that also been done?
Yes, it has.
And so we're in a better posture moving forward, that we're not going to incur any additional expenses, say for 2021 to continue that, or will we?
The expenses that we will incur in 2021, we've already budgeted for, or we've included those in our 2021 budget plan.
Great, thank you. And then this question is not to you, it's more to OCD. Is there anybody here from OCD? Councilmember Brissette?
Not that I'm aware of, Councilman Palmer.
Okay, I think OCD, and a lot of people watching this probably don't know, but you alluded to it, that OCD covers a lot of our housing expenses, our blight remediation efforts. I know we were supposed to, in this past budget, actually hire for more folks to work within blight remediation across the city. I'm just curious whether or not those positions are now gone, and if this money was taken out of the blight remediation money or housing money, and if we could get an answer to that maybe at the council meeting would be great as well. Somebody from OCD to answer that.
And Councilmember Brissette, if I can chime in for a second. Councilmember Palmer, we have an affordable housing project in District A in the Carrollton area that didn't have a back door or back steps, and it's a chronic problem because state code apparently doesn't mandate that you have to have a back door, and of course it adds to the overall cost of the project, particularly when you have a bunch of units. And we reached out to OCD, and they were able to actually provide stopgap funding to add all of those stairs, and so it's a win for everybody because the neighbors are happier now that that headpiece has been added, and obviously it's an important safety feature that's been done as well. So to your questions about how OCD money is being spent, I just wanted to give an anecdotal one about one that they were able to help bridge for us.
Yeah, I like how they've been using some pots of money for stopgap funding to make, just a little bit of investment will make the numbers work for smaller developers, which I think is really important when we're trying to produce more units. So that's great to hear. I just want to make sure where that money is coming from, that we're not depleting those kind of resources at this time. So
yeah,
thank you.
And based on, I think I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, but these funds were from planned code enforcement area where we were going to use those to supplement their staff. And it was determined that that supplemental staff was not necessary any longer, which is why those funds were being transferred here.
Okay, well, I think the district council members will probably disagree with that assessment. I don't want to speak for my fellow district council members, but.
I believe you're right, Councilmember Palmer. In about a year ago, we amended the budget 700,000. And I think that was Councilmember Jeruso's amendment for code enforcement by this same number. Just to put memory on the record. But Mr. Lyman, if you could address Councilmember Palmer's concerns with OCD. One, you addressed where it came from, but also if you could address her point relative to her earlier statement for council meeting next week.
And also, so with that being said, Councilmember, could I respectfully ask that this not be added to the consent agenda, right? If we don't push this forward, so we can talk about it more at length at the council meeting?
Sure. Yeah.
So we were definitely add this as additional information to provide later.
Oh, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. Mr. McKnight, are any public comments?
Comments.
No public comments? All right, I will move adoption.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
4 yeas, no nays, and the ordinance is adopted. Next item.
Number 7, ordinance calendar numbers 33133 and 33134.
Mr. Lyman.
Yes, if I can make a comment that I failed to make earlier as well, and it's regarding the CAO is out and not involved in this particular meeting, and it's because he's attending virtually at the same time this meeting is taking place, a consent decree hearing with the sheriff's office. So that's the reason he's not able to attend with us today. He certainly sends his regrets. I just wanted to mention that to you all.
Can I just take a point of personal privilege? I want to thank the administration for this meeting today. We've had a lot of public comment today on right sizing the jail and the police and all these issues of social justice. And I think it's great that people are connecting that to budget committee. I think it's really important to note that the administration right now is trying to say not to build phase 3 of the jail because of the fiscal investment that would really hamstring the city to the tune of $8 million in operations and maintenance after this building is built. And I just want to thank them for really looking at that amount hard and making sure that we're not putting more and more money into a and that is trying to be reformed. So I just want to thank the administration for that and thank Mr. Montano for being there today.
Thank you. We'll certainly pass that information along. With respect to ordinances 33-133 and 33-134, $20,000 all other operating. This ordinance is for private foundation grant funds to the Office of Performance and Accountability via intergovernmental transfers. The cities for financial empowerment funds selected the City of New Orleans to participate in this City Start initiative and receive $20,000 in grant and technical assistance to convene stakeholders and develop a financial empowerment blueprint. Funds will be used to cover the costs of city personnel time spent developing the blueprint. And I also have Ms. Melissa Shigoda available to answer any specific questions.
Seeing no questions, I will move adoption.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Are there any public comments?
That's so dumb. I forgot about the 9/11.
Kids around, Cindy? I know my kids would love to be hanging out listening to budget committee too, so.
Mr. McKnight, are any public comments?
No public comments.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
4 yeas, no nays, and the ordinances 33,133 and 134 are approved. Next item.
Number 8, ordinance handling numbers 33135 and 33136.
These ordinances appropriate $5,302,696 in FEMA staffing for adequate and funding for FEMA staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant program. This is our SAFER grant to the New Orleans Fire Department via intergovernmental transfers. SAFER is a 3-year grant designed to help fire departments and volunteer firefighter interest organizations reach and maintain adequate staffing levels, through which we'll receive a total of $15,908,086. The $5.3 million is year one amount, or the first tranche of this particular grant. We have Chief McConnell available to answer any specific questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman, and good afternoon. Welcome, Chief McConnell. Welcome.
Afternoon.
Welcome to the Budget Committee. Good afternoon. Just 2 quick questions. You may have missed earlier, similar Department of Justice grant question relative to police hiring.
I was present.
You were present. So similar. Will the grant be secured? There's different language tied to these federal grants, being that we are looking at some furloughs and not knowing what 2021, and this is a 3-year grant of $15 million. Some of the major concerns of firefighters is, will the grant be secured in light of furloughs in the future? And then question two is, how are you going to secure the matching funds?
So this grant does not have matching funds, which is a really good thing for the city, a positive thing. Couldn't have better timing. It will not be affected by the furloughs. Once again, that's provided that affects all public safety, which it would. That's across the board. And then 2, in 2020, if there were obviously layoffs, then yeah, there would be some impact. But we're working with the administration to mitigate that, and hopefully that won't happen. Part of it will be because this grant is fully funded by the feds. It'll help us keep our staffing up. So we do not anticipate that, and I've had conversations with the administration. We do not anticipate that. And I have been in contact with our grant administrator. We had a conference call with them, with FEMA, to ensure that the funding is secured and we don't risk losing it.
All right, and I assume you're gonna communicate that down to your relative unions and so forth, right?
Absolutely.
Councilman Palmer?
Yes, I just want to thank Chief. This has been a tremendous year for the firefighters. I think we see the need for them continually increasing in terms of public safety. As we all know right now, there's a lot of preparation occurring for the Hurricane Delta that is rapidly approaching. And the firemen have been with us from the beginning when we talk about, what we've had from the Hard Rock on, and y'all being stationed out there. I can just only imagine. And on top of that, having the COVID, which I know y'all have helped out with tremendously throughout the communities with testing sites, et cetera. And then also now having a very active hurricane season, and the fact that it's so well coordinated with the Office of Emergency Preparedness. I just want to thank you. If you don't mind too, I do think you need to brag a little bit on the rating that the New Orleans Fire Department now has because of y'all's work and because of going after grants such as these.
The grants have certainly been a plus on that side, and you know, I'll say it repeatedly. Very blessed to have the men and women that I have within the department, the residents of the city, the leadership of the city. We're all very blessed to have the people we have work for us. Makes it very easy. Very dedicated folks, and they're the ones that got us to the Class 1 public fire protection rating classification that you're alluding to. And it is a very, very proud moment. I got a lot of time on the job. I won't say how many years, but I got a lot of years on the job. And first time getting a Class 1 rating is something to be very proud of. And it's really due to the men and women of this department that got us there.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. Thank you, Chief. We appreciate you and the men and women of the fire department, and thank you for all of your hard work. Seeing no questions, no other questions. Ms. McKnight, are there any public comments?
No comments.
With that, I would move adoption, seconded by Councilmember Palmer. All in favor?
Aye.
4 yeas, no nays, and ordinances 33,135 and 136 are approved. Thank you, Chief.
I actually have the next two items are also mine.
You have a good grant writer.
I do. Very, very blessed. He's sitting here with me right now.
Mr. Lyman?
Yes. Ordinance numbers 33-137 and 33-138 represents $356,052. All other operating funds from FEMA in assistance to firefighters grant program, funds to the fire department via intergovernmental transfers. The funds will be used to purchase 582 personal rescue bailout kits towards protecting the firefighters and from fire and fire-related hazards. And again, Chief McConnell is available for any questions you have.
If you want, I'll comment on what this is. Just everybody might not be familiar. It's called a personal rescue bailout kit, and what it is, it's a device that every firefighter will have attached to them as part of their personal protective equipment. And you know, it's a piece of equipment you hope you never have to use, but it would allow you to literally bail out of a window. It has a hook, a metal hook that you would hook to the windowsill or to another part of the structure and lower yourself with a rope that's in this bag attached to you in a harness fashion, and allow the firefighters to self-rescue out of a window or another opening in the building to lower themselves out of harm's way to a lower floor in the building or to the ground in the event that they got trapped and that was their only means of escape. They wouldn't have to jump. The piece of equipment is fairly new to the fire service. Not a lot of departments have it, and this grant will allow us to have one and issue it to every firefighter, issue them their own personal bailout kit. Good piece of technology. And once again, I'll give a shout out to our grant writer, Captain Matt Spector. He's been writing our grants for several years now, and he's very, very, very good at it. Does a real good job.
Thank you, Chief. Definitely a good equipment for the department.
Next time we get you out of the training school, we're gonna have y'all do a bailout out of a 5th floor window with this.
I think Councilmember Palmer said she's in. Oh, she's out. I don't know what that signal was. With that, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's been
Second.
moved by Councilmember Palmer, and seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Are there any public comments?
No comments.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 4 yeas, no nays, and the ordinance is approved. Thank you. Next item.
Number 10, ordinance calendar numbers 33139, 33140.
These ordinances appropriate $73,818 in FEMA Assistance to Firefighters Grant Program, COVID-19, supplemental funds to the fire department via intergovernmental transfers. The funds will be used to purchase personal protective equipment to protect the firefighters from the coronavirus, specifically 1,700 cartridge filters and 580 full-face respirator twin port adapters.
What this piece of equipment does is if you're familiar with the face piece that firefighters wear as part of their self-contained breathing apparatus, they each have one assigned to them. It's fitted to the individual. This is an adapter that goes onto that piece of equipment and allows them to put respirator cartridges on there. So it turns their regular firefighting face piece that normally would go in the RCBA into a respirator when they would respond to a COVID incident. So to give them the highest level of protection, this adapts to that face piece it goes where your air would normally connect, and then it has cartridges that are replaceable that go into it and allows them to respond and eliminate the risk of inhaling or getting any kind of bodily fluids in their any of their cavities, their mouth, their nose, or their eyes. It also gives us the ability at other incidents, so long as there is a high enough oxygen level and the chemical that's there isn't of a nature that this wouldn't protect you, it would give them the ability to put this respirator on and protect their lungs, protect their respiratory system, utilizing the same equipment. So it's a really good piece of equipment. Once again, it's a piece of equipment that not a lot of departments have. Matter of fact, very, very few, but it gives us that elevated level of protection for our firefighters when they're in, say, overhauling a smoky environment and just want to protect their respiratory system. So once again, kudos to our grant writer and to appreciate the federal government giving us these grants. We've been very successful. In addition to the SAFER grant, we got another $750,000 this year in 6 additional grants.
Thank you, Chief. I would move adoption.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Palmer, Jeruso, both. Are any public comment?
No comments.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4 yeas, no nays. Ordinances 33, 139, and 140 are approved and moved to full council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate you. Thank you, Mr. Lyon.
Thank you. So next on the agenda, we have the budget report. So I'll be presenting the personnel spending forecast. So this is basically the same report that we've been reporting to you the last several months. On this particular document, you'll see that we have accumulated a personal savings amount of about $22 million at this point in the year. Of course, some additional actions have been taken that were announced on yesterday by the administration. So we do expect this amount to be increased before the end of the year. To provide some context in how this report was generated, of note, the current projection takes payroll data as of September 25th. The latest admin payroll ends on the 19th, and the latest police and fire payroll for this particular report ends September 12th. Some things of note, the projections assume that the hiring freeze will remain in place through the end of the year. And as the CAO approves exemptions to the hiring freeze, those will be added to this particular cost model. However, as you might expect, little to no is expected with respect to any vacancies that should arise unless it's in very critical areas. A number of departments submitted revised overtime budgets as part of their budget reduction plans to account for the cancellation of major special events in 2020. Those revised numbers are included in these projections. For the departments that did not submit revised projections, we utilized the 2019 overtime spending for this particular document. And also, or we use, in some cases, we used overtime spend in 2020 with a 25% reduction assumed for non-public safety departments. These projections are for general fund expenditures only and do not include any grant-funded personnel. Some of these costs have been submitted for federal grant reimbursement through the CARES Act, and I think you all have been briefed a number of times on the monies that we've been able to receive reimbursement regarding CARES. Now, the departments with personnel spending deficits, in particular, the fire department, it projects to spend $1.5 million more in overtime in 2020 than they did in 2019. This is due to losing 20 to 25 firefighters in the past year without starting a recruit class. And to maintain the number of people on engines, they've increased unscheduled overtime, which created the additional cost. A recruit class recently graduated, just to give you an update. I can't recall if Chief McConnell mentioned it. Graduated on August 14th. The budget office is currently following up with the chief and his staff to determine how this will impact the number of firefighters in overtime. Our expectation is as we have additional classes, the need for overtime should decrease accordingly. The next one, with respect to JJIC, during the 2020 budget process, we noted in presentations to council that JJIC had additional budget liabilities that we were planning to adjust in 2020 due to the uncertainty regarding costs of staffing the new expansion. These costs are reflected in this deficit, which is driven by overtime staffing required to maintain the staff to youth ratios. I think we probably spoke ad nauseum about that particular concern with the new responsibilities placed upon JJIC. Mosquito control has taken on new responsibilities with COVID relating to sanitizing areas and controlling rodent populations, which has increased overtime spending. The clerk of CDC, earlier this year, the administration reached an agreement with the clerk to resolve a longstanding dispute over budget reductions made in 2012 that will increase the cost of his personnel by up to $600,000 over budgeted levels, which is what's addressed here. The Ethics Review Board, this is due to an employee coding issue that still has yet to be corrected. I think we reported this a couple of times to you, but as soon as that correction is made, it'll disappear from this particular report. And with respect to VCC, it's just a normal variance between budget and actuals that will also be adjusted at the end of the year, more accounting type of adjustments for that particular area. Have any questions? I'd certainly like to make an attempt at addressing those.
Yes, Chair. Thank you. I just wanted, some of these outside entities that we don't necessarily have control over their budgets, you know, from like the coroner, juvenile court, municipal traffic court, clerk of criminal court. How are we going to address that? I mean, that's a pretty substantial overage for clerk of criminal district court. And then going into 2021, is it my understanding that that our CAO has put everybody on notice in terms of trying to tighten up and present budgets that are 20% cuts? Is that occurring? Are they working in partnership with the city?
That's absolutely occurring. But I would say both of those things are taking place right now. We are in the midst of preparing the and compiling the executive budget for presentation to council. And that the cuts that you mentioned have been communicated to everyone. And it is the expectation by the CAO that to the extent possible, everyone will participate. Now, I think there's some nuances that the CAO has to take into consideration with respect to some of the entities, like you mentioned, that we don't necessarily control their budgets, but they do expect funding from the general fund, right? And to the extent that cuts have to be made, I think the CAO is asking for their participation voluntarily, and there may be some situations where he may not be able to accommodate their needs going into the next year. But again, those things are fluent and actually being worked on as we speak. We hope to have something for your review very soon.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. I just wanted to put that on public record to let the public know that y'all have been proactive in reaching out to all these different entities, that we will have budget cuts next year and that we are all in this together and that we all are going to need to make cuts across the board. And no one is immune to that. Even if they are an independent elected office, I still think they have a greater responsibility to the public good. And if our people have to go on furlough and take cuts, I think everybody should be asked to do that. So just thank you very much for that and being proactive. I just think we need to talk about that as much as we can in the public so people know we're not going to surprise everybody on this when we start hitting budget season, up in November. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bowman.
That concludes my presentation of the personal spending projection.
Good afternoon.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Lyman. Next, we will have Mr. McElroy for revenue report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, the revenue report for this month is a lot like last month. We're continuing along about on the pattern we expected. Still buoyed by higher property tax collections, which came just at the right time. And sales taxes, as you can see, are still drastically low. And, we will see when the recovery happens. But for now, we're continuing about where we expected. Let's see. One of the high points you'll notice in section 4.1, general government. I pointed this out last month, but the number is still shocking, so we'll cover it again. This includes the CARES Act money, which otherwise we'd have a lot less. It's been about 51 million of CARES Act money. So you can see that that's a pretty dramatic increase. I note also fines and forfeits are still way down, and frankly, this year is going to come out very short on that. Even though the cameras have been turned back on in some locations, there's no way to make that up. We also have the Harris money is what makes up the bulk of 4.1 general government. The one-time payments, as we discussed last month, same thing, they came in April and July. The CARES Act money is gone into 6.3 contributions and other, which explains why that is so much higher, especially relative to budget. And ultimately, if you look at the bottom line, we are, of course, up over this point last year. But when you take out these one-time and emergency payments, it's significantly lower. We don't know when or if any further one-time payments will come in. So of course, we have to be very frugal about our expenditures. However, we do have these small cushions we can be thankful for, and we're continuing to track the economy. Obviously, we'll present more information about this at the REC later this month. If there are any questions, let me know.
Mr. McElroy, can you comment on the miscellaneous in number 6 and those proceeds?
Yeah, sorry, if I wasn't clear. So we have the 6.3 is where our CARES Act money is, which of course is almost all of that money there. Miscellaneous reimbursement last year is high, 15 million. That included a $10 million one-time payment. So really, we're only down on that, slightly when you take the recurring revenue into account.
And what about in 2.6, the miscellaneous franchise? Is that a
Thank you for bringing that up.
Is that a settlement agreement between not a settlement agreement, excuse me.
That was the payments from CenturyLink.
Huh?
I'm sorry, that was the $5.5 million from CenturyLink.
Okay, I was going to say CenturyLink, yeah.
Yes, sir. That was $5.5 million, which explains, of course, the dramatic bump there. The rest of it is mostly on pattern. Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I have 2.
Councilmember Jeruso.
Thank you. Mr. McElroy, on Harris, is there an additional tranche we're expending? I thought there was supposed to be one payment, and then because of COVID, there was an initial payment that was made, and then I thought there was broken up into 2, or is it, are we waiting on one more is really my question.
Okay, so the amount that we see in here, of course, is just a lump sum, really broken down. This is 2 separate payments that make up the larger payment. There will be a recurring payment, much smaller, but of course we'll take anything. There will be a recurring payment, and I can get you the breakdown of that later on. It's a little much to cover in this forum.
That's fine.
But
Thank
yes,
you.
that is in 2 payments, sir.
And you referenced the rest of the revenue estimating conference that we're having on the 19th. One of the things I'd like to know is you pointed out sales tax collection is down. It was estimated to be $20 million per month. We're a little south of 15 million. Do we have any indications from March forward how that's tracking? In other words, obviously there's a precipitous decline between February, March, and April. Has it been flat? Has it declined? Has it ascended any? Just curious about what it looks like over the last few months in particular.
Sure. It has its ups and downs. Initially, every forecaster thought we would drop and then we would slowly rise again. And instead, we've had obviously the big drop, and then sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Sometimes it's 1 and 2. There's not a consistent pattern. Depends on the public health situation has changed and business closures. So there unfortunately is no specific easy trend we can identify with that. That's some other information I can get you after this.
That sounds great. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Jeruso.
The next item on the agenda is the operating expenses report. So I think you all have a copy of this particular document as part of your packets. This particular report shows a savings to this point in the fiscal year of about $65 million. That number will change, as you might expect, because this report represents basically a picture in time of our actual expenditures, the amounts encumbered and the amounts committed to so forth. Of course, there are billing and billings that are still out within the respective departments that have yet to be entered into our BRAS system. So again, this is a snapshot in time of how much contractual funding the city has committed to in some form this year, which is basically, I say all that to say it's unlike the personnel document, it's not a projection, right? It includes only general fund charged items for the department showing deficits. Although this funding is currently attributed to the general fund, it is expected to be journal entry to other funds at some point. The amount encumbered of particular note category captures the amount of funding that is encumbered in a purchase order. The amount committed category refers to amount of funding that is currently in requisition form. This is not a legal obligation for the city to pay, but rather represents a pre-encumbrance phase, indicating an expectation that these particular items are being requested and needed by the various departments. There are very few negatives here, but those that are show a negative balance or issues with basically some fund codes or accounting entries, and they will be corrected by the end of the fiscal year. Of particular note in the note section on the document, I just want to mention some departments have expenses, something that is not likely represented here. Some departments have expenses that are necessary, but they have not yet obligated the funds. So the unobligated amount is likely a little bit understated, I would say, or no, I'm sorry, overstated. Let me get that correct. I make sure I get that correct. I don't want to give that bad information. The data used for this table is based on a snapshot in time again, and accounting changes may occur. The other adjustments row, it's a huge number, contains pending adjustments to financial system data also. So as we get the system, as you know, our current system is relatively new and was implemented fully, I would say, the current year. So there are certain adjustments that still have to be made to ensure that all of the accounting entries and data is accurately accounted for in our financials. So those things will certainly be cleaned up as we move forward into this current fiscal year. But as we stand today, this is where we believe this is the best possible information available in terms of savings related to other operating expenditures. With that, if you have any questions, I'd certainly like to address them. As well, I have additional staff online to assist me with that as well.
Mr. Lyman, can I ask something very quickly?
Yes,
so,
sir.
for example, in the last column, budget minus obligated for council, that means roughly the council has $3 million, for lack of a better word, in reserves that it could use for a purpose if it wanted to. Is that right?
Yes, sir. And we're hoping you will not need to use that.
I understood. That's you're making the point, what I think where we all are, which is, as Councilmember Palmer talked earlier about the prospect of what's going on and how we make contributions. In my view, kind of looking at available pockets of money is a good place to first start.
Yes.
And this helps that tremendously.
We are leaving no stone unturned at this point.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman. And I know we have 2 revenue estimating conferences coming up in the near future this month. And we'll talk more about the 2019 fund balance. But can you give us any idea what that picture looks like? I know that audit is still ongoing.
Actually, our CFO, Norman White, is probably better capable of speaking to that. But I will say, I believe he certainly is in the midst of that audit as we speak. So, but I'll let him provide additional information.
No, not at this time. I mean, I think it would be very difficult for us to determine, if you can hear me,
Yeah,
the surplus that will occur in 19 that we can carry over to this year. But our goal is, as once we get a couple of weeks from now, we'll bear down within where we are with the audit, the trial balances passed over, and have a better indication of what we see there. But ultimately, if we carry it over, whatever that number is, given the likelihood of the shortfall for this year, it would be eaten up anyway. And so, but we'll certainly be able to present that within the REC, and then also look at the other effect of the reduction in revenue based on the budget too. All that will be compared together. I think we'll give a better picture of what we see.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Norman.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyman.
Thank you.
And that completes all of our budget reports for Budget Committee. And that completes all the items on our agenda. Councilmember Nguyen, thank you. Councilmember Palmer, thank you. Councilmember Jeruso. Mr. McKnight, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Been moved by Councilmember Palmer and second by Councilmember Jeruso. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4 yeas, no nays, and we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.